So as we're setting up to go ahead and do a 1 point or a 2 point for the project, we start out by creating our multi-view with dimensions, our isometric. You guys should have already done that. Now, some of you might have a section view or an auxiliary view, depending on the difficulty of the object that you selected and got approved for. This is a very basic object. This would not be worth nearly all the points. But what we do next is we go ahead and start creating our 1 point. We could use a template from before, or we could go ahead and start our own. If you remember from a 1 point, we have our top line that represents our picture plane line. So if I start out with my picture plane line here, I'm going to make it a random length to start with. We can always adjust it later. Remembering back to 1 points, we put our top view in on the top line there. So I'm just going to move this over here, and I'm going to move it in just a little bit so I have the tail of the line. It doesn't really matter. Oh, I did a copy. I'm going to do a move of this right here so that I've got a little bit of a tail to the line there. Now, remembering back to when we set up 1 point perspective drawings, I talked about how we measure the width of this object, and the vertical line comes down approximately double that width. That's an approximate. We could use a little more, a little less, depending on the size of the object. This object is 3 inches wide, so I'm going to draw a line down that is 6 inches long. Now, that may be a little more or a little less as we start to create it and say, I want it to look a little different. Now, if I have it that close to the object, I'm going to see a lot of the top of the object because the object's going to be drawn down in here, and not very much of the right side of the object. I drew that at my midpoint because that was an easy point to snap to. I'm going to move it over a little ways so I see more of the right side of the object. Now, if you remember, I can copy this line down. I need to go ahead and have my horizon line, something like that, and my picture plane, or my ground line, something like that. Keep in mind that if we want a bird's eye, my horizon line is above my my ground line. If I wanted a worm's eye, I could put that below. We can move all these lines around as we get started. I'm going to also copy in my front view. I want just my front view without my dimensions. That's why I'm doing a drag box from left to right. So it only takes things that are completely inside of it. If I did a drag box from right to left, it would take anything it touched. Notice that I'm lining up my front view with my top view. So right there I've set up to create my 1 point perspective drawing. Keeping in mind that if I want to see less of the top, the ways that I could take care of that is I could move my ground line up some, or I can move my vertical line that has my station point and my horizon line on it over to the right some. Also, if I want to see less of the right side, I can move this vertical line left. That would be a couple ways I could solve it. Now, some people will end up with odd objects. And what you may have to do is you may have to fudge a little bit on this, double the width for our vertical line. That's all right. Make it look good. That's how we set up a 1 point perspective drawing. When we move on to a 2 point perspective drawing, we'd go ahead and follow a similar technique. Once again, I'm going to start with my line up top. I like to keep these neat as I'm doing them and line up the top lines. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer. I'm going to copy my top view once again to set up my 2 point perspective drawing. I'm going to copy it to my midpoint, and I'm going to rotate it. If you remember correctly, I said that we'd rotate it this way 30 degrees. I just set my snap there. Now, what this does is this makes it so that we have a parallel line coming off either way to get our vanishing points. I probably want this object a little bit further to the right on my top line than centered. So I'm going to shift that right now. And I'm going to go ahead and once again get my width. So my width now is a little different because of how I set it up. It's about 3.35. I'm going to double that for my vertical line, so 6.7. to go ahead and get my station point. Once again, I want to copy these 2 angled lines, which is how I find my vanishing points. I'm going to copy them down there. I'm going to extend, and this is where I might have to adjust things a little bit. I'm going to extend up to that line, extend that line, and it's not long enough. It'll be long enough on that side. So on this side, I probably need to stretch it out some more, and I'll try my extend again. So right there, I've got it extended up to that line. Now, depending on the type of perspective drawing I'm trying to create, I'm going to put my horizon line and my ground, or and my picture ground line at different points. So for a bird's eye, I'm probably going to want my horizon up here, my ground down here. If I was doing a worm's eye, I'd want my ground up here somewhere and my horizon down here. And finally, if I was doing a normal, I'd probably want my ground somewhere about here and my horizon line here. Since I'm doing a bird's eye first, I'm going to drop this somewhere. It does not have to, let me back up, I want to copy that. It does not have to line up with the horizon line that I did in my 1 point. I just think that's about a good place. And then I'm going to put my ground line down here. Remember, no matter where the horizon line is, we drop vertical lines from where our angled lines hit our picture plane line down until it hits our horizon line. So just like that, I've got my vanishing point left and right. I can go ahead and copy my object over to this line so I can reference heights. If I had a right side, I could put it over here so I had that for reference as well. So just like that, I've created my bird's eye. I might want to move that a little further over to give myself a little bit of gap. When I move on to doing the other types, because we have to do all three types, I'm probably going to copy this one instead of recreating everything. Most of it's the same. So I've got that copied. I might do the worm's eye next. So if I did my worm's eye, I'd move this line in the object up. I would move my horizon line down, and I would go ahead and extend down to my horizon line to get my vanishing points. So just like that, I've created a worm's eye setup, and I could go ahead and produce that. Same way when I did normal. I could go ahead and copy this one over here. Same type of process. Move this up, move this in between somewhere, extend to my horizon line to get my points. If you want to, you could label all the points, but there would be the quick setup from a multi-view to a 1 point, bird's eye, worm, normal.